It's tea time. It's time to talk about the scrappening, the big balance patch, engineer mains throughout all of Guild Wars 2, deleting their characters, never to play them ever again, uninstalling. What about Scrapper makes it problematic? Why is Scrapper so insane in World vs. World?
Yeah, I think the change is really good. Honestly, I think it's very spammy. Scrapper was very spammy. It's very easy to play, and now you've got to use a little bit more of your brain, unfortunately. And if that means it's dead, then I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's going to be fine. I think you just need to pay attention to your teammates and use your skills when you need to use your skills, and it's that simple, really.
Scrapper being overpowered in a lot of ways makes World vs. World more fun. We're in. Hello, everyone. It's tea time. It's time to talk about the scrappening, the big balance patch, engineer mains throughout all of Guild Wars 2, deleting their characters, never to play them ever again, uninstalling on the spot. Maybe a little bit of an overreaction, but we're going to get into that right now, and we've got some really big stuff in store for you. Like, this is going to be a big tea time. We got Perish from World vs. World. We got Garfried, and you know what? Garfried has even prepared a PowerPoint presentation to walk us through some of the historical points to kind of think about when we're talking about World vs. World, how the metagame might operate, some of the classes, some of the dynamics at play within World vs. World squads. Goodness me, like the performance of this tea time, the production value it's going to another level. Okay, you know, we've invented some new technology just for this. But welcome to the show, my friends. It's very, very good to have you here, indeed. And I think that's honestly going to be a really good place to start, actually, is just talking a little bit of an introduction, as it were, just about World vs. World, how the World vs. World metagame operates. Because this patch, although it definitely did bring some really exciting things for PvP, right, or rather, this patch will be bringing some really exciting things for PvP, specifically with Mesmer and Berserker, I would actually say that the overall theme of the patch was actually very World vs. World oriented, with the way a lot of the classes were being handled, with increasing group support to make some better support options for large-scale World vs. World play, looking at stability, condition cleanse, all this kind of very baseline utility that is extremely important in that context. So, yeah, without any further ado, I think it's time to kind of leap into this. And, you know, we can kind of have a conversation while we're going through this, by the way. We don't need to have, we don't have to just, like, sit in silence while we're presented and, you know, presented to by Garfried here as well. We'll keep it very conversational. But take it away, Garfried. Give us an introduction to, the joys of World vs. World. Now, I think it's really interesting to think about the original version of what the gyros are. They were actually really weird. Like the shredder gyro, you just kind of sent it out and it would just do damage. They were a bit more like minions, but they were all like different minions. I love the blast gyro. That was actually, I was almost sad to see that go because it was quite funny. You would deploy it and it would like fly out to your target and then explode. It was really funny. The ball rat gyro would kind of follow you around, and so would the purge gyro, but they were all actual entities. And this essentially made them kind of trash, right? Because they would just die immediately, right? They would get cleaved down and get immediately destroyed. And it made them very weird to use as well in other game modes. They were a bit kind of cumbersome to actually activate, but they were very interesting. And then, of course, we got to the state that they're currently in now, which is where they're basically wells, but they're attached to you as the player. So, you know, you have your purge gyro, and it hovers over your head and cleanses conditions around you. I think this is also the time when they added a lot more area super speed at the same time to Scrapper, made it like insanely fast, and that is obviously very advantageous in World vs. World, because not only is movement speed really important, super speed can't be removed as well. So it's unremovable movement speed increase, which is super, super important there, because of course you have this really big dynamic of boon removal, boon application, World vs. World, which super speed kind of gets around simultaneously. All of that on top of some, you know, really great support facilities with your med kit. You have Sneak Gyro, a bit of stability from defense field as well. Like lots of really good World vs. World goodness kind of built into all of it. And Scrapper ended up being kind of the ultimate do everything world versus world support build. Of course, it had really good consequences in PvE. I think it made it a lot more usable there, which was definitely the goal of the change, I would say, was to essentially just make it more playable and make the elite spec a little bit more fun to play. But this new design that Scrapper ended up having, I think it definitely started to cause a lot of problems in World versus World, and I think that's kind of the key issue here. Now we're kind of all caught up to speed here. I think it's time to kind of delve into what about Scrapper makes it problematic in World versus, because we saw on that slide there that essentially Scrapper deletes condies from the game, right? It makes conditions not really exist and essentially really locks the meta into a fairly fixed state in terms of what classes you might be seeing, or rather what professions you might be seeing in your standard world versus world Zerg. So why exactly is that the case? Is it the design? Is it the numbers? What is going on there? Why is Scrapper so insane in world versus world?
It is the combination of the large variety of things it does for the strategies that you can use in World versus World. So obviously, like Cleanse was mentioned, Cleanse is very powerful. It's a necessary component for secondary supports, because if you don't have enough Cleanse, you get immobilized, you get covered with condies, and you die. So secondary supports are needed for the Cleanse roll, but it's not just the Cleanse roll. Scrapper also has Stealth Gyro. And I think even more so than the Cleanse that Scrapper can provide, the stealth from Stealth Gyro really changed World versus World. Stealth pushing or stealth is a limited resource in World versus World, because coordinating everyone to blast a smoke field at the same time is difficult, and enemies can punish that. If they see you blasting stealth, they can push for it, they can spike on it with some kind of range bomb.
Yeah.
So it was difficult to properly stealth using stealth blasting. People always relied on Mesmer Veil for that for the most part. And then suddenly this Stealth Gyro came along, and all you had to do was press one button, and suddenly this rare and powerful resource of stealth was available to everyone instantly. And this has not changed since 2019. They did nerf the duration of the stealth a little bit, but the concept of immediately stealthing an entire group is just so strong, because you don't know what the enemy is doing while they're stealthing. They might be pushing, they might be moving somewhere you don't expect, they might be disengaging. And I think this was really the big game changer for Scrapper. So what you started seeing was that groups and Zergs and guilds are starting to abuse the stealth mechanic to sort of quickly land surprise attacks, either quick range spikes, quick immob into AoE burst, just sometimes instantly killing an enemy group from stealth. I think it's a really unhealthy concept. And what it eventually kind of resulted into was that, and this is seen today especially, if groups are stealthing, the other group will just run away, right?
Yeah.
And wait until the stealth runs out, and then try again. And just kind of ends up repeating over and over again. And it's just dumb. I don't really have.
It's just delaying the inevitable. Eventually, you're going to run out, and then But you can obviously have an advantage with it, right? So you just use it because of that reason. They might mess up their stealth. They might stealth early. You disengage, and then you have the advantage, right? If they use it first and they don't sort of take advantage of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of guilds out there that do hide in towers and stealth unsuspecting victims waiting outside. It does happen. I mean, there is a counterplay to it, but I think the casual player base tends to not bother. But I mean, you can mark the enemy if you're in a squad, so you can see that disappear if they're in a tower, and then you know they're going to push. Or that you can have you can have reveals. You can throw things on them. You can put traps down to reveal them. So there's counterplay to it, but I think the casual player base in general, they don't tend to really bother, so it becomes very obnoxious. And then add that with Stone Mist Castle Cloaking Waters, you can stealth for a very long time and cover a lot of distance and ambush, so it's good that they changed it though. I think it's a good change. So standing in the gyro, you're going to get whatever stealth, and then when the stealth runs out, you got 6 seconds of stealth. You can move for 6 seconds basically. So it's a bit more manageable maybe. The fights will you'll get it on quicker basically.
So I think it's worth talking about what exactly is happening to the gyros. So the change that's potentially coming on October 4th, unless it gets reverted, which we'll see. We'll see. Actually, there's been a lot of uproar about this. I think it's not a very popular change with some of the player base. So we'll have to see if ArenaNet kind of stick to their guns on this one. They've changed stuff in the past that people haven't liked and respond to feedback. Basically, the change is that instead of following you around, gyros are going to be much more like traditional wells. You just put them out there somewhere and they just are a field, right? Like a field that does something for a few seconds, right? So it cleanses condies, but they don't follow you around anymore. They're just like a normal necromancer well, any other well style ability. It just stays in the same place, which is where you put it. So just they're all ground targeted area of effects right now. And I actually want to say this real quick, actually, just to apply some context here. There's been a lot of doomsaying about Scrapper, particularly in PvE, actually, funnily enough, less so about World versus World, because I think a lot of players in World versus are probably a little bit happy to see things get shaken up, so less complaints there. But just to be clear, actually, in PvE, like, Scrapper is still going to be really good. It's going to be harder to play and have a different play style, but it's still very much going to be a very, very strong specialization for PvE content. So do not worry, right? Let's just we just relax here. We're all good. Scrapper not actually dead in PvE. Do not trust what people say on the internet sometimes, because they're out of control. Okay, they're completely unhinged, right? Because of this change. But I think there's something really interesting to kind of focus in there, because before this, I think you're definitely in favor of this change, Parrish, I would say. But I think what's really interesting is that I almost want to try to pinpoint what is the actual main issue with Scrapper and why it was causing so many problems. Because I think that a common thing that's being said with people who like this change is like, oh yeah, like it's necessary, otherwise Scrapper will always be extremely problematic. But from what I've just heard there, it seems like, and honestly, I've kind of always felt this way about PvP games in general. I'm not a big fan of stealth mechanics. I think they end up a little bit gimmicky a lot of the time and make the game a bit ridiculous sometimes. And it almost seems like stealth is actually a really big problem here. And like, for example, like here's an example. Like, imagine if you just delete Sneak Gyro from the game and just replace it with something else completely different. Right? Would that actually resolve a lot of the issues with Scrapper as well? Or would the idea of these area effects following you around still be very strong? Because obviously that is a very powerful design concept in a game mode as mobile as Guild Wars 2. I think the really fun example is, just imagine if Necromancer wells followed the Necromancer, right? You're running around and there's like a corruption field following you.
Wow.
That doesn't sound like a lot of fun to play against, I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of the other way around, of course. The supportive gyros are the ones being used by the heal scrappers in World versus World. But if you actually remove, what other areas could you actually potentially attack that would have a similar effect of shaking up the metagame a little bit and improving World versus World without this mechanic? Without this mechanic being fundamentally changed, because it does seem to be rather well loved.
Yeah. I don't know. I think stealth is just so strong in this game mode, and you can see in GVGs, for instance, you can see how strong it is. Like, you can just literally, if you get out stealthed, you get one shot. You don't know it's coming. You've got to react, and sometimes you just can't react to the damage that's in the game currently. And you multiply that by the millions, or not millions, but thousands, hundreds of players that play, World versus World that are like casual. I don't know. It's going to be difficult, really difficult for them. So did I say thousands of players playing World versus World? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
It's more than thousands. But are you kidding me?
Yeah, I don't know.
How dead do you think the game mode is?
I don't know. I'm not too sure. Anyone got any numbers in chat? What do you reckon? Can we do a poll? How many players are playing? Tens. Okay, sorry guys. Tens. Sneb's got the numbers. But yeah, I think the change is really good. Honestly, I think it's very spammy. Scrapper was very spammy. It's very easy to play. And now you've got to use a little bit more of your brain, unfortunately. And if that means it's dead, then I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's going to be fine. I think you just need to pay attention to your teammates and use your skills when you need to use your skills, and it's that simple, really. Nothing's really changing to I mean, you can play Druid now, maybe. You can play Tempest maybe now, but I honestly think that Scrap is still going to be meta. They haven't removed the super. Well, actually, the super speed's now on the cast, not after 3-second delay.
Yeah.
So it's actually a buff for super speed, which is really good. If you're caught in the tail, your Scrapper doesn't need to turn around anymore and wait.
Go back.
You have to wait for that super speed.
Put it on you. Yeah.
Instant super speed, instant purge gyro, wherever in the tail, right? So it's pretty good, to be honest. I mean, obviously the healing needed to come down, but the fact that it can give you boons, right? It's still, I mean, they nerfed it, right? 3-second internal cooldown to the
On purity of
pop
purpose
trait. Yeah, but like it's still better than the other support choices. And unfortunately, they have nerfed a lot of cleanse on Druid. Even though they gave it some extra cleanse on Celestial Avatar, it's lost all of the cleanse on the well, less on the number 2 in Celestial Avatar and less on glyphs themselves. So yeah, I don't know how Druid will play. Maybe Druid and Vindicator in one party as a niche party, as a one-off, like a chrono. You have like a few chronos, maybe potentially. And Vindicators again is very good now with the double dodge.
Double
buff.
dodge.
It's going to be amazing, I think, and you'll be able to peel for your teammates that are off tag as well with Vindicator. So again, you might just play Druid and Vindicator in one party in a 50-man squad or something, or in a 25-man squad as a niche thing. But I think Scrapper's still here to stay. I don't think he's dead. I think everyone just needs to calm down a bit and see and wait and see how it goes. But yeah.
I'm not 100% sure, and partially because I think with the cooldown nerfs on Fumigate, Medkit 3 and the gyro change, I think the cleansing is going to be a little bit on par with what Tempest is currently doing and probably what Druid will be able to do. And I think Druid might actually have better healing than
in Celestial Avatar, the burst heal is actually insane. I was healing someone for like 14k, but again, Heal Vindicator can do that with True Song quite easily, and it's off cooldown whenever, right? You know, so you don't have to build this. I think they need to maybe reduce the cooldown on Celestial Avatar to make it a little bit better, a bit more viable.
I think Druid brings a lot of other good things as well. Like it has a lot of good.
Because that's the thing about Scrapper, right? You got the med kit. You just use it straight away when you need it, right? It's there. You don't have to wait for this building up of energy or whatever.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the core things about Scrapper that makes it so strong. Actually, is just how usable it is. Right? You are able to be extremely flexible with your playstyle and very responsive, right? You can just jump into your kits whenever you need them. Your gyros are instant cast, and you always get value because they follow you around, right? So, and you can use them at the same time as your other abilities too, right? Because they just pulse around you while you're doing other things. It really does have it is the perfect toolkit, right, for Scrapper. And then you have even more buttons, right? The utility skills that you take then give you more really useful skills in your tool belt setup as well.
Tool belt,
a bit of stability there with the defense field, which is also now range too, actually, which again is pretty interesting because it means that you can give someone stability at range. Again, you can support your allies if they fall behind, for example, same as the super speed. And this is the really fascinating thing about this change and I think it's really important to, in a way, kind of address what people are really upset by with this, because in a lot of ways, actually, like some of these things, the ability to use things at range is actually very strong, right? That is a very good thing. It's not exactly a nerf with these changes. It's very much, it makes it different. It will be better in some situations and worse in others. I think a big goal with Scrapper was to make it more situational and less always good. So you have to think about your ability usage a little bit more instead of just kind of mindlessly spamming everything off cooldown and just destroying all conditions in the entire game. But it's also worth noting that, like being able to have these gyros at ranged is actually in some situations a really nice piece of utility, actually. But I kind of really want to home in on this because I think players, although obviously I imagine players will be upset about nerfs either way. There have been some players saying, "Oh, we'd be fine with nerfs. Just let us have our gyros follow you around." That's bullshit. Okay, everyone will be upset about the nerfs. Okay, if it was nerf Scrapper randomly, people are like, "Wow, ArenaNet, how could you do this to us?" Right? That's bullshit. But I think what players have really been enjoying, particularly in the PvE environment, I'd say, is this idea that you can be kind of running around with your hammer, smashing things, and the gyros kind of follow you around and like attack everything. Like this is actually what players are upset about losing. It's not necessarily the strength. You know, they'll probably even recognize. I think players recognize that. Yeah, it's actually really good in certain situations. But it's more the fact that, oh no, the playstyle is changing, and also, and this is a complaint that is also at least worth talking about. It will make it harder to play, right? And obviously, something becoming harder to play can just be a very frustrating experience for players. If they've been playing this build for a long time, it's been working really well. They've been having success with it, and you know they log in, and all of a sudden they're having a lot more difficulty actually playing it. I think that can be very frustrating. I think for a lot of players, particularly players who you know aren't investing as much time into the game. So I guess the key kind of point that I'm trying to get at here is what is the solution here? Like, are there any other options for addressing the issues with Scrapper? We kind of talked about stealth a little bit, but are there other things that could be done to Scrapper that could potentially kind of deal with these issues, which is why I was trying to identify, like, what is the thing that makes Scrapper very problematic? As I understand it, and certainly my take on this, it's that Scrapper is incredibly versatile, right? It just does a little bit of everything, right? And that little bit of everything makes it not situational enough. Right? I think to have a really interesting and diverse meta, you need to have, oh, this is the Druid thing that Druid does super well. Oh, this is the Scrapper thing that Scrapper does really well. Oh, this is the Tempest thing that Tempest does really well. You kind of have super speed, for example, with Scrapper. You know, Tempest has auras, for example. Druid can have the joy of immobilizing people. A lot of fun to play against that, right? I think that this is the thing here, right? So, like, are there other ways that you could maybe attack this versatility that Scrapper brings to the table and keep this kind of identity intact? Because I think that's what's really bothering players. I think people can get behind that Scrapper was overpowered in World versus World, but they just want to preserve the playstyle as well.
So you have to attack the tactical utility of Scrapper, in the sense that Scrapper allows a certain playstyle that is very strong in the current meta, the current set of meta that we have, and you have to attack that by attacking those specific things that make Scrapper so useful for those things. So we mentioned stealth. You could, I mean, I know of a bit of discussion about Scrapper Gyro, how it could be reworked to make a little bit more sense. Maybe remove the stealth blast field, or maybe just make it a moving smoke field and rely on the blasting. And also making the smoke field of the Scrapper stealth gyro permanently visible, right? So you don't just completely turn invisible.
You can see where
the movement is happening. I think maybe that is a difficult thing to implement technically. Displaying a moving smoke field, that could be a problem for coding or whatever. I don't know how exactly that works, but I imagine they might be a bit hesitant to build something like that if it's difficult. But I think there are options for Stealth Gyro to make it.
Yeah. I hope that they. I hope they remove the super speed, because my friend Epi, he's got like a bank tab full of speed runes. So guys, if you could help him out,
he wants to enable the speed rune meta. Yeah. I think it is actually worth talking about. This might sound really weird, and in some ways this might actually this will be fine. Actually, I do think super speed is actually a bit of a problematic design. Just in general, I think there's a reason why they made
movement stat is crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of a problem. And don't get me wrong, I think it's fun. It's really fun to use, like zooming around, like some crazy speed and so on. But super speed in some ways is inherently problematic to the design of I would actually say the entire game. I'm not gonna lie, like it's pretty busted, to be honest.
Yeah, it is.
Or at least
speed is
at least applying it to everyone, right? Like if it was like just you, then I guess it's not so much of a big deal, right? But because you have such excellent, consistent group super speed application, that mechanic is just inherently incredibly strong, particularly seeing as it can't be removed, right? I don't think we really need to add more boons into the game, but I guess it's already kind of a boon already in a way, right? It's a unique effect that does something good. It's just that it can't be removed. That's honestly maybe even worth discussing, right? Like talking about changing the way super speed operates, even something like that.
What does super speed do outside of World for World anyway, right? For PvE, I think it's not really that important.
I think it has. It's kind of like a very niche utility in PvE. Like there are some encounters in the game that are very movement oriented, and that can be really, it can be really good to have super speed up to on there. It's one of the really nice things about Scrapper and certain raid encounters, for example, is that you can zoom all over the place really, really quickly. That's really nice. It also sees a lot of play in speed running, weirdly enough, because you can make the NPCs run faster.
True. Yeah. I think also in PvP, sticking to your enemy that is trying to kite away from you is very useful to have super speed in that situation. But I think the biggest place where super speed has impact is World versus World.
Oh, for sure.
And so it should be pretty safe to make changes to super speed if you want to try that.
If you want to bring more options than Scrapper in as a support. Secondary to Firebrand, then you've got to touch either the boons or give the other possibilities boons. But super speed in general is access. You can use it, right? Everyone can use it. So it's just a thing. It's just another mechanic to think about, and it's interesting to use. I don't think they should get rid of it. Just maybe not have it on on one class that can give it only, or it can have so much more of an uptime from one class. Because obviously Tempest can give super speed, but not on the scale of Scrapper. So,
yeah, I think just in general, like chipping away at again some of like the really big toolkit that Scrapper has. Like, maybe if you just increase cooldowns a fair bit, maybe if you remove its stability access, maybe defense field doesn't give stability anymore, right? It's just it gives Aegis instead or something, right? And it just is a bubble, right, or something like that follows you around. Like it gives Aegis and follows you around and blocks projectiles, but it doesn't give stability anymore. I think there are definitely some changes that could be made that could have a similar effect, because there is something to be said though for saying that area of effects that follow you around are very unhealthy in competitive game modes. I'm very much inclined to agree with that, by the way. One of the builds that I think is a genuine menace right now in PvP is actually Flamethrower Scrapper, or a lot of Scrapper builds, because they're not strong actually, but they are very unfun to play against.
And they love Flamethrower Scrappers in World vs. World. They love it.
They are really, really unhealthy for the game because it just follows you around with perma super speed and just auto attacks you to death. Yeah, it's got perma stab and it's just like super speeding all over the place. And the AoE follows it, so it's going to blast gyro you, it's going to shredder gyro you, and it's just really unenjoyable to play against, right?
No, it's fun to play. It is fun to play, but it needs to be addressed a little bit.
Yeah. And this is definitely a bit of a problem with the design. And this is kind of the counter argument to like, oh, okay, well, just nerf the numbers down, right? Just nerf the numbers. I think that there's some version of that could have a decent effect. But the problem that you run into is that the design is kind of the problem here, certainly in competitive game modes, right? Like AoE's following you around. It's probably just something that shouldn't exist. And funnily enough, I say this as someone who actually really enjoys the idea of each profession having its own different take on ability types. I kind of like the fact that Chronomancer wells have an effect at the start and an effect at the end. I think that's pretty interesting, like the pulsing effect. I think it's kind of cool that maybe Scrapper gyros, which are just wells, would work a little bit different to Necromancer wells. I think that's interesting. That's a fun thing that I think Elite Specialism can bring to the table. But now you run into the issue of, well, not everything is going to be acceptable design in every game mode. Like, is it okay to have AoEs follow you around in PvE? Yeah, sure. It's absolutely fine. It's not a big deal. Is it okay to have AoEs follow you around in PvP or World versus World? Probably not. Right. I think, just to kind of, to say something for all the roamers in the chat, is Celestial gear okay in PvE? Actually, yeah, it's not really a big deal. It's actually very interesting in PvE. It opens up a lot of fun and varied builds you can play. However, Celestial Gear in World vs. World has it's destroyed roaming. It's turned roaming into a total clown fiesta. Full of joy and wonder for everyone who loves a little bit of 1v1 action in World vs. World. So there is this really interesting problem that the game mode, in my opinion, is experiencing right now, where the design has kind of crept into it and has started to cause a lot of problems. And now we kind of get down to brass tacks here. What do you do when this happens, right? Because you have two choices. You can either change the design, which will affect all game modes, to something else, or you can just make those abilities really, really bad in that game mode. So in other words, if we wanted to fix gyros, well, we could just say, you know what? Gyros in World vs. World now all have a 60-second cooldown, and Sneak Gyro has like a 3-minute cooldown, right? And we can say, well, these abilities are just very, very weak now. Right, and essentially
Sneak Gyro would still be very strong.
Sneak Gyro would still be good, even with I was about to say actually, even with a 3-minute cooldown, like that would be insane. Still, it would still be really.
Guilds
really
would just wait 3 minutes to push.
Yeah, you just have like a 3-minute break between each push. Yeah, I like that.
Exactly.
Some tea, you know.
And so yeah, you could make those abilities really, really bad there, if you want to do that. But in a lot of ways, is that really the solution you want to do? You just want to say, okay, anything that isn't good, we just make it complete trash. Right? Is that really the direction we want to go in? I think it's a good question. I'm not actually totally decided on that one way or the other. I think it's a solution that can work, right? But this essentially means that you're going to kind of artificially reduce build possibilities, right? You're going to say, well, these abilities are badly designed for this game mode, so we make them complete trash, right? I think it's very appealing to try to find a design that maybe works quite nicely in both game modes, right? For example, look, just a devil's advocate, I'm going to get ripped to shreds by the YouTube comments here, but honestly, the new design of gyros, although you could certainly say it's less roleplay, it is actually perfectly strong in PvE, right? Like, there is utility to that in PvE. It's not like deleting it from the game. It's just different and more difficult to use, and you could say less roleplay with Scrapper. And in World vs. World, it's a much more workable design to make the abilities not dominate the game mode, right? So that's kind of the advantage of going in this direction. The advantage of going in the other direction will be just say, okay, Sneak Gyro is now 10-minute cooldown, okay? You have to wait 10 minutes between pushes now. Enjoy, right? And then all the other gyros get tripled in cooldown or something like that to make them significantly weaker or just not really usable. Well, at that point, it's an interesting thing because then the abilities just don't exist in that game mode anymore. Which, in other words, you're saying, well, you can have your roleplay in PvE, but you're just not allowed to have your roleplay in World vs. World, which I think is weird in its own right, right? You're just going to say the RP and design just doesn't exist here, but it's fine over here, which I think is unusual. I don't think there's a perfect solution to this, right, at all, actually.
Yeah.
I really think that no matter what way you go, you're going to have something, someone's going to be unhappy, right? Like with something that you do.
In general, okay. I like to take, especially when it comes to World vs. World balance, I like to take a bit of the approach that the goal justifies the means sometimes.
Ooh.
Especially when something is really broken, really gimmicky, and World vs. World metas have been very gimmick defined in the past. You know, Scourge, Warrior Bubble, Signal of Inspiration. We've been over them. Sometimes it's just best to delete them and find different ways. In this case, however, I don't think it's necessary. I think we can find some solution where Scrapper is balanced, and I think it requires the gyro change. I think you need to deal with Sneak Gyro in this way, make it a localized field that can be bombed by the enemy. And if this is a way to do it, let's do it. And there's not much of a middle ground there in terms of keeping the functionality of gyro, unfortunately.
If they fix super speed on other classes, then it would be nice, I think. It would be really good. Okay. If they fix super speed on Mesmer, it gives super speed at the end of the world. It doesn't make really any sense because you're not going to stand in it unless you're AFKing. So it makes no real sense. If they put super speed on the start of it, it could be an option instead of null field, even though they've increased the cooldown on null field. Could be viable if they give super speed to
So bring the
Druid and
glamour
super
tray
speed.
back, right? Yeah.
I'd love that. That was the reason I made Mesmer, to be honest, and then they nerfed it.
They just removed the tray from the game.
Yeah, so actually, no, I tell you, I made Mesmer so I could abuse the bug, the falling damage bug, and one-shot people for memes.
Yeah.
I come clean. I'm not gonna lie.
That was a good. That was a classic.
But if they gave super speed on glyphs, that would be crazy. Super speed on Tree Song or something on Vindicate, it'd be crazy. But Scrapper's still gonna be really good, guys. Honestly, it's really,
Scrapper
really
will
good.
be fine.
I mean, well, in that case, then, let's talk about that. So, if we still think that Scrapper's going to be really strong and potentially even still the go-to support because of the toolkit it brings to the table, then in that case, hasn't this? Well, obviously it's very hard to predict what will happen, right? There's so many variables that things can get really, really crazy, particularly with all of the other changes, right? We've got way more stability. Mesmer now basically has stand your ground in World versus World. Pretty sick skill right there. For example, Druid's getting a bit more stability, right? Thief even has a stability stack thrown in there as well on Well of Bounty. There's some really interesting changes to shaking up the world, or trying to give some more options to stability.
They've made the game harder, right?
But what I'm trying to get at here, though, is that if we don't think that this is necessarily going to change the meta, then we haven't really actually hit the essence of what was wrong with Scrapper, right? If we go, okay, well, we're going to change the design of the wells, and the wells are different now, and they're harder to use, but Scrapper still has all of this stuff, and it's amazing still. It will just be harder to play. Then, in a way, haven't we really kind of failed with this change?
You have to separate the classes that are played and the playstyle that dominates.
Okay.
So, for instance, we can have a meta with exactly the same classes, but with an entirely different playstyle. Maybe it's more melee oriented. Maybe you can push more. Maybe it's more pirate chibi. There will be less stealth, so less stealth memes to worry about. It will be more focused around setting up the engage, etc. Right. So yeah, metas in World don't necessarily think in classes that are prevalent, but also think in how it's actually played out.
Okay, so what meta, what type of playstyle would counter, what kind of meta would cause Scrapper to not be played?
If
everyone decides to AFK with Siege.
Yeah, well, okay, well, apart from that.
This is a very difficult question because what kind of meta would make Scrapper bad? If Scrapper cleanse is not enough to, for instance, deal with all the cover condies that can cover
it's not the cleanse though, is it? It's the super speed, it's the stealth, and it's the medkit heals that it gives. I don't know. I mean,
what's changing? The super speed is not changing, right?
No, it's not. It's buff.
Getting better. Yeah, it's getting better.
Getting better. Yeah, the stealth is nerfed, which is great because it means you just don't have to wait so long for people to push because they can't just stack 15 seconds of stealth or whatever. So, I don't know. It doesn't matter. I don't think.
Okay. So I mean, in that case, haven't we come to quite a startling conclusion then?
Yeah.
That this change actually doesn't really fix the issue. No?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would fix the issue?
I'm not sure if I agree with that.
Ooh, debate. Let's go. Tell him why he's wrong, Garfried. Call him an idiot. Let's get things. Let's get a little bit hotter here.
I can't say that he's wrong because when it comes to predicting world metas, you always have to deal with so many variables. It's just hard to predict what happens. We've seen the same meta since 2019, right? Same kind of strategy being played: stealth push, range spike, etc. So it's kind of hard to see how that will change from here because we've been in that meta for so long. The only way to really see it is to go and test it, right? You have to go into the fights. You have to go into the GVGs. Guilds will come up with something. They will try it out, and if it works, it will be the next meta. If it doesn't work, we'll stay with the same. The reason why I say I'm not sure if the meta will change or not is it's simply impossible to predict. You can only make some kind of guesses.
Scrapper will may have the difference to Scrapper and GVG will be actually more prevalent, or whatever the word is.
For sure, yeah. For sure.
Yeah, for sure, that'd definitely be different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys want to.
In GVG, stealth is so important, right? So
yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, and there's less space as well because the arena's smaller, and yeah, there's so many other things as well. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean,
the whole downstate and everything.
Again, what I want to try to solve here is to really attack the core problem here. Like, if we're going to take a few things away from Scrapper, because that to me again seems to be the problem. To go back to this original concept here, is that the problem appears to be that Scrapper simply has too many things. It has all of the toys, whereas the other supports kind of have gaps in their toolkit where they don't have everything. They might not have stealth. They may not have access to super speed. They might not have extreme con declines. They might only have burst healing. They might not have as much sustained healing, whereas Scrapper kind of heals really well sustained, of course, but also has excellent, it's like some solid burst healing as well. It's kind of got the complete package. So I think that surely the way to actually attack this, or at least an alternate way to attack this, would be to look at some of those things and take away a few of those things that it does extremely well, right? So that it has a weakness, basically. Because I think, again, the core problem is that Scrapper is very much a jack of all trades, master of all. It's good at literally everything in a world versus world context. It can just do everything that you need it to. And that, I think, is honestly like probably a bigger design issue with the class, rather than the fact that the wells follow you. I think that wells following you probably is a little bit scuffed, but I would actually argue that the bigger design problem is the fact that it's just too good at literally everything, right?
Yeah.
I think it's fine if it's like really good at a few things. It just needs to be not good at everything. This has been a problem.
Imagine nerfing it more. People are going to go crazy, Teapot.
Well, I mean, I think this is something that's actually caused a lot of it. Just for some additional historical context, we saw Garfried's history lesson. Now it's my turn for a history lesson. If you look at builds that have caused problems in Guild Wars 2, and this is not just World vs. World, I'd say all game modes, the builds that dominate really hard typically are the ones that do a little bit of everything. Like definitely in PvP. You've got stuff like Spectre right now. Why is Spectre so good? Because it kind of just does everything, to be honest, right? It's just all over the place. It's super mobile.
When Firebrand came out as well.
Yeah, Firebrand was amazing at everything. It still is in PvE. That's why Firebrand is so good in PvE, is because it's good at literally everything. Same thing with Power Mech, by the way. And with just Mechanist in general, it's just good at everything, and this is something that I think really needs to be tackled with balance. Asymmetry, or rather, like classes doing different things, is really important when it comes to game balance, and that seems to be the issue with Scrapper. So I guess my question is, and I think this would be a really good discussion to have some really good answers here, maybe, is that if we can take away, let's say we can take away one or two things from Scrapper, what are we going to just basically say, okay, no, you're not allowed to do this anymore, right? Because I think that it could keep super speed, because that's its thing, right? Like Scrapper is the super speed class, right? It's the super speed elite specialization.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But if you removed super speed, it wouldn't matter, honestly. You just get speed runes if it really is a problem.
Yeah. So what else we can take away? Do we
destroy it?
Well, you wouldn't have to destroy it though. Like, for example, like if you remove Sneak Gyro, let's just imagine that we remove it from the game. It's a new gyro. It does something else. We can come up with some like random effect that it can do. But you don't get Sneak Gyro anymore. If you want to get stealth, you got to get your bomb kit out. Boom. Get your smoke bomb. You got to blast that shit. You don't get your mobile Shadow Refuge or even your regular Shadow Refuge anymore. It does something totally different.
It's a nice idea.
If we
still
do that,
play Scrapper.
Well, you'd still play Scrapper. Okay.
I think so.
Let's go a little bit further then.
I'm not sure. I'm not so sure.
Oh, really?
I think a lot of World vs. World players have been a little bit jaded by how long Scrapper has been meta. It's been 3.5 years, and it's hard to imagine a meta without Scrapper, but
Scrapper brings smoke, so you can blast it, so you can still abuse stealth. And you can use that in Wallace as well. In
the smoke field, that's
you're in the tower stealthing, then just run away. Then they can just go back in the tower and stealth up again. I don't think it matters too much, honestly. It's everything. You've got to really destroy it. You've got to destroy it.
There's counterplay to a smoke field. There's no counterplay to a moving Sneak Gyro. That's the issue, right? If you want to balance something, you need to give something that counters it. And if that thing is very easy to do, which is just a range bike, it's very easy. you can deal with it.
Well, okay, so I mean, let's also kind of talk about this outside of isolation. So let's imagine that we do that. Let's also say that we remove the stability from defense field as well from Bowler Gyro.
Okay, yeah. Now we're
cooking with gas, right?
Okay.
And then let's go even further. Let's say that we then take the stability on Eye of the Storm and we add it to the World versus World version 2 for Tempest. So now Tempest has stability, and Scrapper doesn't have stability, and Tempest does. Now let's imagine that we maybe just nudge the super speed on Druid, because right now there is super speed on Druid. When you give AoE super speed when you leave Celestial Avatar, that's a bit weird, I guess, because it's kind of like, well, you kind of want to
demand, yeah,
it is. It's not on demand. It's like, well, wouldn't you kind of want to be in Celestial Avatar when you're maybe pushing in with super speed? That's almost a little bit weird. So maybe you could even change the functionality of that. I mean, oh man, this would feel super strong actually, even in PvP. What about if you did it the other way around? Maybe you get super speed when you go into Celestial Avatar instead. So you can you're a druid in World versus World, and we're going to we're going to charge in, we're blasting with our Lunar Impact. We've got our instant cast Mega Condi Cleanse now on our Seed of Life. We're going crazy. We've got all of our other druid goodness that we've got, the immobilize stuff, right? All the massive AoE healing. And then maybe you could also and druid has a bit of stability now too, actually, on some of its abilities. You could maybe give it a bit more to give it that, to kind of bring it up to parity with some of the other
have we
things.
got to think about small scale? I know we mentioned this before we started the stream, but
roaming and small scale. I think that roaming is kind of impossible to balance, to be honest. I think that it should be considered. I think we shouldn't like flat out ignore it, but I'm not sure if you like fully commit to it. I think there are. I mean, as long as Celestial gear exists, I feel like things are weird.
Yeah,
it's
a little bit weird. Is one way of saying it.
Yeah. Well, it's
fair enough. Yep.
It's one stack, but bear in mind we can split Eye of the Storm. It could be 3 stacks in World versus World, or it could be 2 stacks, or a million stacks.
A million,
right? Yeah, literally a million stacks.
Is the current defense field, right? So
let's say
sounds
fine.
Stacks.
Yeah. Well, what I'm trying to get at here is that we can give Scrapper these weaknesses. Oh, you don't have stealth anymore. Because funnily enough, Druid also gives stealth on that trait too, actually, right? It could be like you enter Celestial Avatar and you stealth everyone around you. That'd be kind of interesting, right? That sounds pretty disgusting. I'm not going to lie. Actually.
Yeah.
Maybe it's super sweet when you enter, stealth when you leave. Okay, like that might be a bit better.
Yeah, that sounds okay.
But what I'm trying to get at here is that if we give a really big weakness to Scrapper, no stability. Oh, you can't stun break allies, because I don't think it can, right? No, it can't.
No.
Whereas Tempest can. Guardian can as well.
And now
Druid can too.
Spellbreaker can as well.
Spellbreaker can as well, right?
That's a really good change.
Okay, we've got a weakness for Scrapper compared to, say, a support warrior or a support Tempest or, a support Druid. Awesome. Now we've got more room to mess around here, I think. And then maybe it's okay if we keep our gyros intact in terms of their design. You could certainly bump the cooldown up as well, because don't get me wrong, the design on those is still really good. So maybe you go, okay, 30-second cooldown, not 20. Maybe you add a cast time so that you can't use it at the same time as your other abilities to make them slightly less usable, so they're harder to get value of. You can't use them while you're stunned, for example, would be a change you can maybe mess around with. Stuff like that. I think, what do you guys make of that? Like that type of approach to maybe tackling this issue. Rather than looking at the design, we could look at kind of the meta design, as it were, where we're looking at, okay, well, the problem is it's too versatile. Great, let's hack away at the versatility then.
Yeah, the stab is the important part, and the medkit heal and the super speed and the stealth. But if you start adding that to other classes, that's the right way to go, I think. I really enjoy the fact that you have classes that are very niche, and they do specific things, and the class does. But the problem is it's just nice to have another class to play instead of the same classes all the time. It's nice to just mix it up. I don't mind. I don't mind Scrapper personally. It's just nice to have other options for other people to because let's be honest, if everyone could relog, then it'd be awesome. But there's queues, so you can't obviously organize sometimes, and you might be stuck on a class that you're clowning around on, and then suddenly an organized fight turns up, and a com wants you to get organized. Yo, can you get on Scrapper? There's a 50-man queue. I'm not sure
Not
about
happening.
that, buddy.
Not looking good.
You're going to enjoy my ranger. Here's my druid that's been buffed with super speed and stability.
Yeah, let's go.
So you know what I mean? So it's just making it a bit more accessible to everybody who plays whatever class. They might be role-playing on druid or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
class diversity is very important actually for Worlds.
Yeah.
Just not even for balance sake, but just giving people something to play for their favorite class is really big.
Yeah.
For so long, Ranger has been not viable for Zerg meta, and changing that is actually
cool.
very big.
Yeah. And I do like what they've been doing, actually, with some of the cooldowns. Actually, they've been trying to make skills that do similar things have kind of the same cooldown. I think it's actually really fun, because now a lot of the AoE Stunbreak abilities all have a 30-second cooldown. So they're kind of parity in terms of usability and cooldown alignment, which I think is really interesting, too. But just to quickly address something that a really good point that Epi brought up here. Well, the game is going to feel worse to play if you do that. I actually agree with that. I think that, and this is the really fun thing about Scrapper. Scrapper being overpowered in a lot of ways makes world versus world more fun, right?
True.
And this is a super interesting thing to talk about, because in a lot of ways, I was speaking with Angels a long time ago about this, actually. And the concern, I think, with Scrapper being overly nerfed is that it's kind of holding back the tide of, like, the horrors of, like, insane condition spam, right? And, like, how much damage there is. So if you nerf it too much, well, then the game mode is going to warp with how it might play out, and it will play differently, which is interesting, but to me, it's kind of like, what's the alternative here, right? Like, if we're not willing to kind of, okay, that's problematic, and kind of hit them, you know, kind of like whack-a-mole with the balance, well, then you're never going to change anything, right? Then you'll, unless you want to buff everything to the level of Scrapper and totally homogenize everything. I mean... I don't know. Like, I guess that's a valid way to do it, to say, okay, well, now Tempest is Scrapper, but it's red, and Druid is Scrapper, but it's green. Well, I mean, maybe you could do that. But I do think it's much more interesting if each specialization kind of brings, you know, its own thing to the table, right? It has its own special thing that it can do. I don't think that something should be mega hyper best in slot, right? Like, you know, let's admit, you know, you should never have the situation where, oh, this one thing that only this class brings is totally broken. I think a great example would be Guardian, actually. And I think ArenaNet realizes they've tried to address it. Guardian, for, well, I mean, more or less since the start of the game, right, has been the key source of stability in world versus world. I think saying, oh, look, Guardian has its own special thing, stability, yay, that's probably a little bit too much of an extreme effect to lock to, you know, like only lock that to Guardian. That's probably a bit overkill. But I think every profession having its own special thing, like auras on Tempest, for example, or just elementals in general. I think everything having its own special thing that has niche utility and niche value, I think is really cool. And I think it's actually highly desirable, right? Like different classes bringing different pieces of the puzzle. So I don't like the idea of just fully homogenizing everything in that regard. I think that at some point in every game mode, you kind of have to take the heat and eat some nerfs that might change the way the game is, even if it temporarily makes the game slightly less fun, if that makes any sense.
I think they don't need to touch Scrapper too much, because you don't want to be in a position where the game mode is not fun to play. And you know, reducing stability and obviously cleanse means that you're going to die of a slow, painful death, and you're not going to be able to use your character, and you're moving around not very much. So yeah, you got to be really careful making it unplayable, but at the same time bringing everything up to a level maybe of where it is now. I think is a really, honestly, these changes are really good, great direction. But the main issue with World vs. World, and this is completely different, but is how do you get more people playing the game mode, and how do you make it more fun? Because at the moment, in my opinion, the priority needs to be now on Siege, and rewards needs to be addressed.
For sure. Yeah, I think there's going to be some changes to that kind of down the line, and some very interesting things that are in store. I think we'll be hearing some news about that relatively soon. Like ArenaNet definitely have that on their radar. I agree, that is definitely key, right? Is attracting players to the game mode, adding a bit more structure so that players kind of know what they're supposed to be doing and they kind of get the point. I think people feel quite lost when they enter World versus World, and making sure that the game is actually fun. But to be honest, though, wouldn't you say that perhaps slowing the game mode down a little bit and kind of, in general, nerfing a lot of things in World vs. World would actually help with that? I think this is one of the really big problems in PvP is that a few years ago, everything did an insane amount of damage. So you would join as a new player and just get attacked by a Herald, and the Herald would crit you for 10k and kill you instantly.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you can still do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that can still happen.
Yeah.
And
I mean, this still happens. Yeah.
In World vs. World, this is inevitable, right? Because there are so many. If you get hit by 50 AoEs, you're dead. Right? You're not going to survive that, no matter what. But I think there is something to be said for having the game mode be almost like a little bit less punishing. If you step out of position, you maybe don't die instantly. You have a more slow, painful death instead, right? As opposed to kind of immediately annihilated. So I think.
Yeah. What would you prefer? Pick your poison.
This is not possible. This is impossible because so much of the learning that a new player for World has to do is understanding the movement, and you cannot balance the movement with numbers. Like a player needs to stay on tag or know how to move, disengage, push. These are all things you learn by playing the game and being in voice and asking questions. And you cannot balance that with skill balance. It's just impossible.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to be learned just from playing it.
Yeah, it's going to be very tricky. It is going to be difficult because of just how many players there are.
You would have to nerf the damage to a point where time to kill
damage.
is
I think they need to remove some of the things that's the power creep, helping with the power creep. They need to address food and stats. But I mean, if they're not going to address stats because it's difficult for them to do, then some of the auras around keeps and things, and maybe the food could be addressed.
I would like those auras removed. Yeah, I think they're a problem, but
I think you can look at cooldowns, right? Because I think that I would say that one of the really big things that has happened in World vs. World is that there's almost more damage. Not necessarily the damage is higher, but there's more of it happening all the time, right? Like whereas before, I think there was this almost kind of like an ebb and flow. Like you have a big spike, then there's like not much going on. There's another big spike, then it's just like a bit of consistent pressure going on. Whereas now, I think that when you have stuff like Revenant existing and Dragon Hunter, like the damage is it's kind of there's a lot of damage, right? It's pretty intense with how much damage is constantly flying out there.
And damage has been toned down a lot.
And that's been nerfed, by the way.
Yeah,
and it's still quite overwhelming for new players, I would imagine. But yeah, the DH trap still hasn't been touched enough, though. I don't think
they need to nerf the other one as well.
It's got to be blockable. I think they should have addressed it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I mean they've toned it down, but still, if you coordinate with 20 Dragon Hunters, it's 10 Dragon Hunters, it's still gonna one shot you if you don't dodge it. So
it's a lot of damage.
Yeah, I think they could have.
I'm seeing some discussion about in the chat about voice chat and how communities work.
Yeah.
The thing you have to understand is that it's hard to say if voice chat is a bad or a good thing in World World. What is a fact is that it is the best thing, and people will play whatever is the best thing available to them. So you cannot really change that, right? So communities and Discord communities, especially that exist nowadays, are a fundamental, unchangeable thing about World vs. World, and you just need to kind of live with it. I would say.
Yeah, bring VoIP in, Wobbers. I agree. Arctic Star.
Just open voice. Yeah, that's
Let's
good.
go.
That
Content,
would be
huge.
Yeah. That would be good for stream content. I think you'd have some very interesting interactions. I think.
Yeah, I'll probably get banned instantly.
Yeah, it wouldn't be ideal.
Sorry, Twitch.
Yeah,
would be ideal. Yeah. Have you played Rust?
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It'll be content.
Not a good idea.
Yeah, it would be some memes.
Probably not work.
Well, it's a very interesting one, right? With the whole dynamics that are going on in World vs. World, and I think balancing. I think it's important to also understand that there will always be a best in slot, right? That's always going to be the case. Like no matter if you balance things pretty well, there will always be that thing that okay, most of the time you're going to want to pick this. Oh, most of the time you're going to want to pick this. Right, that's pretty much inevitable with just the way things are. Because players are going to optimize towards it, right? It's not a problem. The goal is that you just have things close enough together that it's not the end of the world if you play the one that's like slightly worse, right? Like that's the goal, right? Or there's not one that's like a no-brainer that just has something that's so strong and nothing else can replicate. Like that's the really big thing. You need to make sure that there's no unique thing that one profession has that literally nothing else can do. And again, just to kind of contextualize this in another game mode, I think a really good example of this would be the original, honestly, this is actually every game mode actually, would be the original Chronomancer with Heart of Thorns, having both quickness and alacrity. It's so funny actually, because a lot of people complain about the PvE meta right now, but hello, PvE friends. The metagame right now in PvE is easily the most diverse it has ever been. And that is actually true, by the way. That sounds super weird, but it's actually true. Even with the mech god emperor invading the territory of PvE right now, it is easily the meta that has the most diversity.
It's invaded WoW vs. WoW as well.
Yeah, the roaming Sally mech.
Well, I also see them. The funny thing is, I also see them in Zerg sometimes, and I always try to explain to them that mech is not good in Zergs.
Have you seen them on the wars? The mechs firing from the wars.
Oh yeah, of course they're.
It's actually insane. You can change the trait to make it fire
the rocket
from range,
arms.
right?
Yes.
The perception of mechanist is so widespread that it's like the build for everything, right? Like it does massive DPS and whatever, and it's easy to play, so everyone likes to play it.
I died
and
to the mech
frequently, and it's useless, but they don't realize it.
The player's not the issue.
No, for sure the build is.
Downstate mechanist, but his bot is obliterating me as I try and kill him. Just like, okay, and now it's a downstate war, and you just hope and you pray.
Yeah.
Downstate mechanist is the problem.
It's gonna get nerfed a little bit, right? So it should be okay.
Yeah, so
fingers crossed.
Pretty cool changes there. Like now you've got to, now you guys have got to worry about like some kind of horrific celestial berserker abomination coming in the next patch. Actually, oh man, skull grinder that also gives stability and quickness. Maybe, goodness me, that's going to be.
I am a berserker enjoyer, so I am looking forward.
Yes, berserker is back on the menu.
Merging pets with Soul Beast is looking really good.
Yeah, I love that. That is really such a cool change, by the way. Yeah, I love that. Do you think that has some potential in World vs. World for group play, or like even large scale group play? I think so. Actually,
yeah, because that's what was missing. It was missing the ability to stay in the fight and do damage and not die. And now you can merge with a defensive pet and an aggressive pet, so you can. You can tether and pull and then stay alive and do damage. It's perfect, I think.
Ranger also lacks good weapon options, and that's not going to change with this, but it's definitely going to help for sure.
But there is these things called scourges and DH traps still, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We'll have to see. But it's good direction though, making more DPS specs viable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love to see that. I
Berserker
think,
changes are great, and the hammer damage on Earthshaker again. That's great.
Oh yes,
it's a good change.
Hammer stun is back.
DPS Spellbreaker can now finally do damage with their other weapon.
7 damage Earthshakers,
rather than arcing slice into 7 damage. Nice combo, buddy. So
yeah, it's super fun. I'm personally, I'm like, we've been talking about this for a while now, but I'm honestly super excited to see what actually happens in World vs. World, right? And even if I'm really looking forward to people playing Druid and going like, whoa, maybe it's not amazing, or at least not there just yet, but holy shit, I'm actually doing something, right, on my Druid. I'm useful. Like, this is epic, right? I think that, the usability stuff like targeting an ally with your staff too is really nice because you can like pulse healing around people, which is much more usable, I think. You can target allies with your staff too and heal them as well, which is pretty nice.
They need to buff the healing on staff 1, I think. Really?
Yeah, it's definitely it's pretty weak.
It's 100 heal or something, or not even that. I don't know.
It's a good number. Yeah, it's 100. That's gonna help against like a Rev Hammer.
It's gonna help against. It's gonna help. Yeah, that will work.
Yeah. Firebrand guys is unplayable, I'm afraid. Unfortunately, Firebrand's in the chat. You guys had a good run. It is unplayable. Next patch.
The changes are punishing people that are spamming their skills, but people that are mindful and actually use their stuff at the right time aren't going to be punished. So the difference between good players and bad players is going to be a bigger gap, for sure.
I mean, attrition will definitely start to be more important again, which is a good thing, right? Because it counters the spammy nature of the meta that we have been seeing so far.
Yeah, which is always good, right? I think reducing the amount of spam actually really helps with new player uptick as well. I think, again, to talk about PvP, I think one of the really big issues historically with PvP is that the game has been like insanely fast-paced with how many abilities are kind of flying everywhere. So reducing spam, I think, is really good. Look, I mean, hey, it's why people kind of like some of the power mechanist builds in PvE right now is because it's a little bit more relaxed with how you can play. Maybe Power Mech is a little bit too relaxed, potentially, but we'll see. I mean, honestly, it's fine to have builds like that are relatively easy, as long as they're not, also, completely dominating everything in the game.
Yeah.
Also being super strong at the same time. Although, the build being easy isn't necessarily the issue. The issue is that, for PvE, to slightly side dragging to PvE here, the problem with Power Mech is it's just too good at everything, right? It's very much the scrapper problem. Like, in PvE, Power Mechanist, it being easy is fine. The problem is that it's also ranged, insanely tanky, has amazing crowd control, does a zillion damage, and has really good utility baked into it for free. That's why.
Or while you can go and make yourself a cup of tea and AFK.
Yeah, and all of the damage is passive, and passive damage is really, really strong.
Passive, yeah.
It's really good to be able to do that because you just don't care about anything that's going on, any mechanics that are happening around you. Which, in a way, is also why moving wells in World vs. World is really good because you can be entirely doing your own thing, right? You don't care, and you still have this like value. You're just generating value while the wells follow you around. It's pretty good. Yep. Yeah, people do not know they can stow the mech, actually. This is hello, mech enjoyers. Top tip. Okay, if you stow your mech and drop it down again, really good crowd control. Okay, there you go. Fun fact. Enjoy. Yeah. What were we talking about? I've trolled myself. As usual, I've derailed the TeaTime and I've griefed you. And honestly, that's very fitting, seeing as we're talking about World vs. World. Griefing. Nice.
That's my specialty. I'd like to take over the TeaTime now.
Yeah, griefing is your specialty.
I won't say no more. Then everyone knows the truth.
Okay.
No, actually, I yesterday we caught somebody pulling a bit of a grief moment.
Oh,
he
really?
was building a treb on a wall, which you could clearly just bomb, and then he was pulling tactivators, all of them.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Sabotage.
Yeah. We know who he is. We've made a note of his name, and the authorities will be in touch, buddy.
Yeah.
Write him down.
The World vs. World police.
Call him out.
That would be pretty funny if you This would be so. They would never add this to their game. But imagine if you owned an objective, you've claimed it with your guild. If you could blacklist people, that would be.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Would that really be cool?
That's a good idea.
I bet that'd be so toxic, right?
That's good. You could troll your own guildies. Like, how amazing is that? Right? Yo, can I use the dragon banner, please? No. Nobody. It's mine.
You say, you have to play the meta build, then we'll give
you 10 gold.
Right? And you have to send the gold. You can have the dragon banner. You can charge for it. Yeah, that's good actually.
Getting onto dragon banner, that needs to be nerfed still. You can only use it if you're outnumbered. I think they need to sort tactivators out. You shouldn't be able to have a 50-man Zerg defending with siege and a dragon banner and cloaking waters. And I mean, obviously, you could put them in each tower as well. It's just crazy still. Remember when you could take those out into War vs. World 4 at a time? Just take them out into open field. That was fun times.
Yeah.
Really fun. Broken. Clueless is one word I say. Clueless.
I think that
people don't know.
Yeah, there's definitely some potential to look at kind of rejiggling some of the defensive siege, right? Some of the offensive, how it works.
It should interact with your traits. They need to just do that at least. Okay, just do that then.
Yeah.
Oh god, the balance implications for that are horrible.
Oh, really?
Because I'm spamming 2 on my Mesmer, on my Chrono, and every time I interrupt somebody, it reduces the cooldown of number 2. So I have permanent number 2, which is hitting everybody and stunning them and removing boons because of another trait. It's just...
Yeah.
Remember when CI was a thing? Yeah, Dragon Banner was CI as well.
Yeah,
so fun. Oh yeah, and Chrono.
The confusion bullshit.
You can use Continuum Split with Dragon Banner 5 and do it twice. Amazing.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, Then you've got the portal, obviously. You can portal Dragon Banner 5, portal away.
I'm always like a bit. I feel like a bit of a World versus World purist, to be honest. I think that layering on systems like this, I'm not a huge fan when it comes to stuff like Dragon Banner. I mean, I get what it's for. It's like, oh look, you have a bonus for holding an objective, but I don't think you really need to go that far, right? I think just having stuff like the defender's advantage is inherent, right? You have a terrain advantage when you're holding an objective, right? Like this is the advantage for it, is that and terrain and movement it's a subtle thing, and it might not be
spawn advantage as well, probably.
Of course, yeah, which is not immediately obvious, but there's a huge advantage to being able to defend a location in World of Sword because it's so movement oriented and so much about area control that being in an objective is inherently advantageous. It's like if you've ever questioned stuff like this, like think about why it's so hard to take garrison, for example, right? When you're pushing into your opponent's garrison, your enemies can get back really quickly because it's close to the spawn. There's loads of places they can hide and bombard you and pick away at you and slowly whittle you down. Right, it's just very hard to actually take a lot of these objectives, and that's just inherent because of the way the game mode works.
I mean, you're not meant to take an enemy keep against parity force, right?
Of course,
unless you're getting double
in theory,
teamed.
Unless you mega outplay them. Yeah,
that's how it balances. The problem is that what happens in between that, right? If your enemy is much weaker than you, but still at the point where you cannot take their keeps at all. That kind of results in stalemates, right? Because you can't attack their fortifications because you'll just die, and they won't come out of it because they will die.
Yes, exactly.
That is something that should also
stalemate, and that needs to be addressed. I agree with you. And if they bring rewards that happen and it forces people to come out, put fishing in World vs. World. Honestly, I'm just throwing it out there, but I say a few random things now and again. But like fishing would be like that would bring people out. You'd get gold and rewards, and you could attack the fishermen. You could fight over the fish. Like you could have events. You could do events.
You can fish in World vs. World already.
Yeah, you can, but you get nothing. You don't get fish.
You get nothing.
It looks like a fish, but it's a weed. So 1 copper. Enjoy.
I think that adding fishing. I don't think you want to add fishing to World vs. World. I think it's very deliberate.
Okay, you add fishing. No. You add fishing, and what you get from fishing is supply.
Okay, what about flying mounts then?
No. Yeah, look, we already have that. Okay, you can you can like leap in with a warclaw, right? Into some
enable beetle in World vs. World.
Oh,
you can't get in the tower. You don't have siege. Fly into the tower.
You can beetle race across the map and smash into a gate.
Bring
and
all
break
of the mounts into World vs. World.
Yeah, siege turtle in World vs. World.
This is
siege turtle.
They might do that. They actually might.
Why didn't they? Yeah,
they might do it.
Yeah, I can't wait to ride that.
Siege turtle would be it would be pretty interesting.
If there's any devs watching,
please no. We're trolling, by the way. Please don't take this seriously. Yeah, we're just having some fun.
If the turtle was like insanely slow and used supply to fire, I think it would be okay. I'm just gonna say.
Okay.
Because
the warclaw on the gate thing is kind of like
I'm kind of bracing for impact here because I actually think it is quite likely they add it to World vs. World. Just so.
Oh, insider.
That's not inside info, guys. I just think it's quite likely they will. They've talked about kind of wanting to do it or playing around with it a little bit. Like they posted about that on the forums quite a long time ago, actually. But I definitely think it's quite likely they do it. But yeah, I just think it would have to be like the role I see it having is almost like a medium, like longer range than a catapult, but maybe not long as range as a trebuchet, and it's extremely slow moving, and it uses like 2 supply per shot, so you don't get that many shots off. It's just very, very slow. My concern about that is
it would actually be maybe used as like a counter siege, like not as something that can destroy walls or something, but something that can deal.
Maybe it can only destroy siege.
I like that actually.
That could deal with the ACs actually.
Yes,
maybe.
And it can.
What
actually,
if it has like crazy range?
Yeah, it has really high range to break through arrow. I mean, wouldn't that actually be kind of overpowered though? Like it would be like it
would work a little bit like NG Mortar Kit, right? Like,
but it just means the game would be faster.
ACs.
It would just be faster. It'd be great. I think that would be good. Because the problem with the World vs. World is for the casual player, they log on, they want to play maybe a couple of hours, but it takes so long to try and hit an objective. Yeah. And it's like hours and hours, and you have to be on voice, you have to be on this class. And it's like killing all siege is just so obnoxious. It takes so much time to drain supplies. I think it just needs something needs to happen with the game mode where it's like just sped up. It just needs to be faster. The gameplay's fast. It's just the game mode isn't
something that delays the attack, but not indefinitely stop it if some force is clearly stronger.
Yes.
And if you siege properly as an attacker, you can kind of deal with things, but it's not properly balanced out. I think it's too much in favor of the defender at the moment.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I think the other issue is that, I mean, I don't know, this is going to sound crazy, but to be honest, I just don't think it's that fun either. I don't that's kind of a problem, right?
After you've had it, yeah.
I don't think that interacting with Siege is just very enjoyable, particularly
it's
with
supposed
all
to
of
be
the other
epic,
stuff that,
and I get that, but
doesn't feel that epic
it's
to
not
me.
very epic when you're getting rained on by 5 ACs. Oh, I feel epic right now. Please heal me, Scrapper. 1-1-1. I'm over here, buddy.
Gameplay.
Omega gameplay.
No Scrapper. Unlucky. We're all dead, guys.
Yeah.
Back to spawn.
I completely agree. Like, this kind of broader topic of getting world versus world moving and the game to be really dynamic and fluid, I think will be really
Just
important.
build shield gen, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is, of course, the way you want to go. But then the disables come, the
disables. Yep.
Ooh, yeah, it's pretty epic.
It's not,
though.
yeah.
But no, I mean, there should be some big reward reworks, I think, as well. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but that will be coming. I actually expect them to go, well, whatever I say.
One gold,
like this,
right? One gold for Emblem of the Avenger. Come on, do it.
I can't believe people
That's 100 kills.
I said,
that's fair, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like that, like 1 gold. I mean, I think the way you could do it is just, they'd probably do it with materials, not like liquid gold, but yeah, they'll probably throw a lot more stuff at you.
I hope so.
I wonder how
I
they're gonna go on this.
I don't see why it's fair that someone can chop down trees, press F, and I have to do all this stuff in Webber, so I get nothing,
Yeah.
Well, I don't get nothing, but it's not anywhere near the level of what you can get in other modes.
Do you know what the best gold per hour in the game right now is?
I have no idea. Is it fishing still?
It's fishing, yeah.
Fishing.
Well, I mean, it's the
there you
most.
Go. Bring it into Webber as well.
Like it's the best sustained gold per hour, yeah. You can get really high, like stuff like doing the strike mission challenge mode is actually insane right now. But you can only do it once a week, obviously, right? Like doing raids every week.
Yeah. Some of it's time gated, yeah.
Yeah, it's time gated, right? Whereas fishing, you can just keep going, right? You can just keep blasting.
Or logging into your daily jumping puzzle and collecting stuff on alt accounts. That's quite good.
Yeah.
By alt accounts.
They could actually add a raw gold, but it would probably have to be time gated, right? Like in PvP.
Yeah.
Or a lot of the gold in PvE is time gated as well, like the raw gold, right? Items you can typically farm over and over and over. When it comes onto actual gold, it's typically time gated. So I could see them adding like seasonal world versus world choose, or maybe like some raw gold to like the weekly chests and stuff like that. But yeah.
Once you've got all legendary stuff, what do you do with skirmish tickets? Like, what can you trade them in for? And I think that's another thing.
Yeah,
could be able to
tens of thousands of those things. Like, I can't use them.
We need to have some use for that, I think.
Yeah, they're pretty nice for infusions, right? Stat infusions are pretty cool. With the skirmish tickets, I think they're
maybe
45 each, right?
Maybe they could make it a bit quicker as well to get the skirmish tickets for people that want to gear up in Wild vs. Wild rather than having to raid.
Yeah,
because it's a bit time gatey.
The other thing you could definitely look at is just giving you materials, right? There's like all these classic items that you get in other areas of the game, like the shipments. You even get a few of them in World vs. World reward tracks, actually. Just boom.
Yeah.
Throw those in there, easy peasy, job done, and we're good to go.
Yeah. Let's go, Roy.
Yeah, let's do it. Roy's watching right now. Actually, is he?
Is he in the chat?
Roy, he's not in the chat. It's because he actually hates World vs. World and doesn't like it.
Wow.
This is factual, yeah. This is
it's
true.
tough. That is actually true, by the way. Like that's leaked.
It's true. I heard it as well. Mm-hmm. He hates World vs. World.
Just to kind of steer it back to the balanced discussion about World vs. World a little bit. So we talked about Scrapper a lot, and we talked about some of the interactions on some of the damage classes and so on, like just the dynamics of World vs. World. In kind of large scale play, are there any other major things that you think should be addressed, or like problems that are in there? The ones that would be obvious to me would be, say, Necromancer's monopoly on, or near monopoly on, boon corruption, and Firebrand's heavy stability application. Looks like the stability application is being tackled a little bit, but what do you think about the way boon corruption and boon removal works? Would you actually like to see almost like a similar approach here to stability? So maybe tone down Necromancer a bit, but give it to some other classes as well to balance that out, to perhaps, kind of improve that diversity there as well.
Oh, if you start nerfing Scourge, then melee becomes more available.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also if you nerf corruption on, I don't know. it's a possibility. I
Do
think
you
it's
want
in a.
to do you want
I
to
don't
give
know. I don't know.
corruption to other classes or boon rip? Because those are very different things.
I think both. I think it's fine to have both shared out. I mean, Untamed has a bit, right? You corrupt boons on the second ability, I believe. Actually, if you take a trait on Untamed. So Untamed has boon corruption. Mesmer has boon removal, of course. Rev, of course, your favorite build, core boon removal, Revenant.
It's been nerfed to the ground now with the energy increase. Unfortunately,
it's still pretty. It's still pretty okay. You could use one of them. I think one in a squad can be pretty useful, but they have to be pretty knowledgeable of how it works. They've got to build up the energy, and then they've got to strip all the boons when the enemy pushes, basically. And it can be really useful still. But that's literally it, and you give alacrity and you can give some might. And then if you swap to dwarf, you can still road and so on and so on, and you can CC. But it's nowhere near as good as other classes, really. You can't stack them. But yeah, if you nerf Scourge, then obviously everything becomes more viable that strips boons. So it is an option. It is an option. Do you want to promote more melee engages in Mobbers as well? Well, maybe it's more fun. Maybe it is. Yeah, maybe that's the way to go. Goodbye Scourge, guys.
They're doing it. They're doing
Trails nerf.
Wells nerf. Trail nerf, yeah.
Yeah. It's just kind of like more on the kind of diversity thing. What? Because I think the classes that have been around forever. Would we say that the two most, I guess, dominant builds, or rather professions in World War would have been Guardian and Necromancer? I feel like that's been there since the dawn of time, right? Like, there's, obviously there are other really strong options. Those are the big two, right? Like your boon application stability and the thing that removes the boons from the bad guys, right? So in a way, that would be something that you'd want to tackle down the line and have some options. Of course, Mesmer can do this pretty well. And I understand there are actually some groups that run a lot of Mesmers for boon removal. Yeah, you have Spellbreaker now, of course, too, with Warrior having a lot of boon removal, too. But I think that might be something to also look into. I don't think literally everything in the entire game needs to have boon removal. That could probably lead to some madness down the line, I think. But I think that could also be something that could be looked at because, and just to bring more variety and more things that could be brought into the game.
Removing nerfing Scrapper will affect the amount of boons there are, so there's less boons to remove. So, but if you nerf Scourge again, it just allows more options, definitely, because at the moment that is 100% meta still, even with the change to Trail. Like Trail was just busted, wasn't it? Let's be honest.
That was fun skill. Unlimited targets. I like that actually. That's good. Yep. Unlimited stability. Unlimited corrupt. It's it's good. There's another weird thing. This is a slightly unusual thing actually. Do you think that boon corruption and removal should actually just have a very strict priority, basically like first, you can cover your boons, like first on, basically first on, last off, basically. In other words, if you apply a boon, then you bury it with loads of other boons. The boon that you applied first will, it will be the last one to get corrupted. Because now it is super unusual, actually. And this is super confusing.
Skills,
because different skills have different priorities. Some abilities always remove a certain boon, like Steel, for example, on Thief will always remove Aegis and Stability, right? Yeah. There's all sorts of creative. Some abilities are random. Some of them have strict orders, right? I wonder if this is something that would actually be, or maybe should be made deterministic. I guess no matter what way you do it, it's always weird, right? Like there's going to be this kind of unwritten rule in the game that will always be there no matter how you do it. But I think making it consistent might make it a little bit more, a bit easier to understand, right?
Thieves might be disappointed with that. Thieves might.
The suggestion to make it, was it first on, last off?
Oh, yeah. That was like an example, right? Like, I don't really... that would be one way to do it, right? But I'm sure there are other ways you could do it, too.
The point... What you can do at that point is... There are some specs that are just really good at repeatedly applying boons, right? Herald, for instance, pulses boons on a 3-second interval. So what you can do with first on, last off is then... Okay, you stack your stability, and you just push and start spamming boon. Doesn't matter what boon it is.
Yeah, you cover it. Yeah.
There's every single boon in the book. Just throw it out, and your stability cannot be corrupted. That is probably not desirable because the builds that you start selecting for your composition are just going to be focused around as much boon output as possible. And it's going to be a little bit spammy. It's going to be a little bit gimmicky.
It'll be good for a little bit, and then when you got to reapply stab, though, it's going to be at the
And then,
then you're in pain, right? Because you keep applying the boons and you have to stop doing it and then let it move down before you reapply it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it'll be great for a bit, for the first 30 seconds.
It's a tough one. I think it's a really complicated issue.
I mean, you can deal with it with like resets and so on, right? Yeah. Like the problem is the point is the problem that you get with that situation is that you just start spamming boons as possible, and it's not. I don't think it's very good way to deal with it. I think.
What about if they say you cannot remove stability? Stability is always removed last. What about that?
Interesting. Yeah, you could definitely. Well, I mean, wouldn't that be kind of like an even more extreme version of first on, last off?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
You don't get my stab unless you remove all my boons.
Yeah.
Pretty much. The Mirage trait, actually, if they bring double dodge Mirage back, it removes stability when you dodge. If they bring that back, I've played with it before. It can be okay because you can set your pull up, dodge into the enemy, strip the stab, then pull them.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it called actually? It's Sands
of Time. No.
I know what you're talking about. It's the GM trait, right? When you dodge, it like steals a boon. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
The bottom one. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm getting old. Guys. Can't remember the name of the trait, but yeah, I think there are actually there's some interesting stuff that you can do. For example, you might go, oh, but Thief wouldn't have its special thing. You could just actually just make a few abilities just do this directly. For example, the trait on Revenant, Brutality, it just says whenever you basically hit someone with quickness, you remove a stack of stability, right? I think you'd have attacks like that, right? You could have Thief, the steal trait on Thief. You could just say, okay, it's always going to remove stability, right? It just, steal stability and then 2 other boons, right, from your target and share them around, right? Like that's something you could do. To kind of still have that super cool flavor that like, oh, this ability always will remove the stability. You'll always get through the CC, right? There's some things you could do to kind of bring some parity there. But I think in general, I do like the idea of making systems as standardized as possible. Just because I think it makes it much more learnable for new players, right? I think it's super weird to me that different skills will behave very differently with an incredibly important mechanic like boons and conditions, right? That's super weird to me. And I think that having, I guess, predictable behavior is really important, as opposed to having like semi-random behavior, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I don't mind the fact that some traits and some specs, some classes will have some priority of boons, but it just I don't know. I think it's okay. I think it's in a pretty good place.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah, it's not too bad, right? Like right now, I suppose, because there's so many abilities going off that realistically you're probably not going to notice, right? Like the order that your boons are being removed, they're just all
you'll never notice, and you'll never be in control of it, but.
Yeah, you either have boons or you don't have boons. Usually,
it does impact in a little bit in the sense that if you get lucky and you keep stability in the current situation, for instance, you might survive, whereas in other situations you might not survive. There's an element of randomness to stripping, I guess. It's probably not ideal to have that, but it's hard to see how exactly. An order of stripping would be better.
Oh. Well, who knows? We'll see. It's an interesting topic to discuss, I think, when it comes to World vs. World balance and just skill design in general. But yeah, do we have anything else to talk about really about the World vs. World happenings, the gaming that's going on? You've got Distortion now on Chrono. Very nice. Love to see that. Mesmer mains rejoice. We're back in business.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to say it's amazing because you really didn't. I don't know. You don't really need it, but for small scale, it's good. Yeah, I mean, you've already have so much access to like everything. You don't really need it.
Not so bad.
But yeah, it's another thing. It's great, I guess. Yeah, it's not a massive one though. But the Hydro swap is huge. Hydro on Rev again.
Oh yes,
pretty big.
Yes, we are.
You have to do. Legend swap Spike with the Hammer 2, Hammer 3, Legend swap Road, Spinny Hammers. So that'll help with the range spike again.
Yes. It'll be entertaining content. That's one of those really funny features. I like that one. The Rev Sigil swap coming back on Legend swap amuses me a lot because they removed it They said it was unintentional,
Yeah.
but actually it was intentional the entire time. You know, that's
Yeah.
a good one. Very entertaining, good content. But yeah, for sure. Like, I think a lot of the stuff for Mesmer, or rather, well, the change to Mesmer was very much oriented at PvP. Like the PvP has been a little bit rough for Mesmer for a while, for a long time now, actually.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now that's very much going to make it a much more attractive option for all of the Mesmer enthusiasts, the Virtuoso and Chronomancer fans over there. You get another button. Man, Chrono has got to have been
Another button. I know, that's the worst thing, actually. I've got to remember to press a different button now.
Yeah,
for my
Mesmer
F4. Is moving to F5.
Is just so weird, right? Because Mesmer has been changed so many times over the history of the game. Has it actually got the most changes? I think it has, right? I think.
I don't know.
Because, you know, Chrono got totally new shatter skills. It got distortion removed. Now it's getting distortion back again. Mesmer lost distort share completely. Chaotic Interruption got, like, noodled completely. Right? Mirage had its dodge removed.
Dodge. Yeah.
Maybe Mesmer is the most broken class.
Mesmer's just hard to balance, I guess.
I think Mesmer is hard to balance, actually, to be honest. I think it's really hard. Like, anything that has a lot of instant cast abilities and a lot of disruptive skills is super hard to deal with. And it also has just... Oh, yeah, Phantasm's got totally reworked as well.
Phantasms,
that's totally different. It just has so many strong things about it that it's been an absolute nightmare, I think, for ArenaNet to balance it, right? Yeah, Portal. And yeah, Portal got completely changed, actually. Yeah, Mower as well. All these crazy skills, right? Like, all these amazing skills that it has. Now you have a Mantra of Concentration. 600 range.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll use that. I think I still will use Illusion of Life, Veil, and Nullfield, honestly. I think...
Yeah.
If they remove stab from Scrapper, then you could maybe start considering it as a stab for for rotating it with your 5 rand.
The current Mesmer role is sort of a niche utility supplementary role, right? You don't need 10 Illusions of Life. You don't need 10 Veils.
Right. Unless it depends on what server you're on.
Mesmer takes more of a stability role and more of a standard role, I would say, in World to World. Then you also wouldn't run Illusion of Life on every single one, right? So definitely take Mantra of Concentration in that case.
Yeah, I think that's ArenaNet's goal, is that their idea is, okay, instead of having a firebrand for stability in every single group, okay, maybe we have a Chrono here. Well, Chrono doesn't really... I guess it can heal a little bit, particularly if you went like really deep on mantras, for example. So you could have like a little bit of healing. But maybe you would combo your... you'd combo your Mesmer with a Tempest or something, or with a Druid. So you have the healing there, and you have the Condi Cleanse on that one, and the Mesmer kind of does a little bit. It has the stability, it has the utility. And then sometimes you'd have a Firebrand, and then, maybe sometimes you'd have, I don't know, you'd have a Soul Beast giving stability with the new longer range stance share, right? Because now you've got 600 radius stance share, which is super cool because it also makes you immune to immob, chill, and cripple, right? That's pretty neat. And that you can share out to your allies there for a brief period of time. So maybe you'd run one of those, and then you'd combo that with, I don't know, just another healing build that can kind of do that as well. So I think there's loads of they're trying to make it so that you could run a lot of things. I think that you might say, oh, well, it's not best in slot. Well, yeah, sure, maybe it isn't. Maybe it turns out that it's still better, and it will, it will always be, for all time, it will always be better to run Firebrand. Let's just imagine that turns out to be the case. But their goal is not necessarily to make like Firebrand bad or these other builds, ridiculously overpowered. Their goal is to make it work, right? To make it actually do something. I think this has been a lot of their balance philosophy, actually, over the last couple of changes. Really good example is like they buffed a lot of weapons, right? Like core weapons in PvE. It's not that, we want to make these weapons busted. We just want to make them better, right? So that you could play it and you could have success with it and get some value out of it. And I think that's what they're trying to do in World versus World as well. Like, it's like, if you play a Chronomancer or a Druid or a Soul Beast,
would be great.
It's still good, right? And you can get some value out of it.
Yeah,
they could buff weapons in WvW as well. They could.
Yeah.
Some weapons aren't used. Some classes aren't used. It'd be good. Yeah, I don't know why they picked Mesmer though to put extra stab on the thing. I don't know. I think they should have put stab on other classes that aren't used.
Yeah.
Because
Why do you
Chrono
want to see a
is
bit of
used.
stability? Why do you want to see some stability?
I think Tempest is gotta, right? It's gotta.
Tempest.
Yeah, I think so.
Bit of Tempest.
Maybe
Tempest gaming.
maybe Druid has to. I mean, it has the elite now, right? Pulsing. I don't know how good that'll be though.
Yeah, I mean,
It might be. Yeah, it might be okay.
It's also it works like the Gyro, right? Is it? Like it's pulsing around your character.
Well, no,
I think you
just
placed
put
it.
it
I think
down.
it's
You just
AOE.
place it down.
Oh,
It's
that's an
ranged
AOE.
again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Just place it down.
What
plonk
about
it down.
what about adding stab to the stun break that they buffed on Vindicator? Because they buffed the range on it. It's a stun break, but it doesn't apply stability until after. Like it's like a delay. So what if it actually gave stab to allies? Would that be too broken?
Probably.
Because it's
quite a short
spammable,
cooldown, doesn't it?
kind
yeah,
of.
It's,
yeah.
So it's
yeah.
I mean, you could just tweak the cooldown.
If it's one stack, then it's not that impactful, right? But
what if it's 2 enough to get you out of a Dragon Hunter longbow 5
Oh.
cage? What if it was 2? Would that be too over the top? Probably.
Probably, yeah.
Should people just die in a Dragon Hunter longbow 5?
I think they should.
That's
just the case.
That's the counterplay. Is you just die.
That's it. You know.
Die and get revived. That's
It is what it is. Just banner. And hope that the cage has disappeared.
I don't like Longbow 5.
I think it's
Good
perfectly
skill.
fine.
Good skill.
It's just there's not enough stab. We've got a lot of stun breaks, right? They're giving a lot of stun breaks, but the problem is this: you need 2 stacks to get out of it. So, and how do you give that to somebody who's far away from you? And now you can with NG. Now you can with Scrapper, right?
Maybe they could change Longbow 5 so that you just go through it with 1 stack.
Which
they could nerf it so you have 1 stack you can get out of it, or you can just stun break out of it.
Which End of Dragons elite specializations do you think have some potential in World versus World? Catalyst, maybe? Bit of Catalyst?
Catalyst is too hard to play. It's too hard to play.
Too hard.
Catalyst is already used as a DPS spec, but it's essentially
no one plays it unless they're like god gamers. It's not for the public majority of the casuals.
Vindicator.
Vindy for sure. Yeah.
Vindicator
Spectre.
We'll probably actually see some more play.
No, not Spectre.
Not Spectre. Oh man.
Not yet.
Spectre's so cool though.
It is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would need to
happen? I don't see any situation where Spectre is good actually.
Wow.
Like they would have to seriously rework the wells so it's actually useful for AoE DPS.
How broken would it be though if they buffed that? It's already very good in small scale. If they buffed it so it's viable in large scale, it'd be just crazy in roaming. It'd be disgusting.
Bit of Willbender.
Yeah, Willbender. Yep. Willbender. Not sure about Untamed. I don't know. Not sure about it.
I've never played it Untamed actually. I don't know.
Don't think so.
Their hammer weapon is obviously solid. Has like some area damage there, some area crowd control. Even has some boon removal, but probably a little bit weird to use because you are actually reliant on your pet to use it, which is obviously
the pet,
weird.
That's why.
And the pet it may not survive, right? It
may
die.
It may definitely not survive. Yeah. Unless you can tell it to just sit in the corner while you go push.
Yeah.
Just stay in the tower behind me, buddy.
You need like another F skill. You can just have the pet just like stay. Just have a sit command.
Just watch, call if there's incoming.
Yeah. And then it teleports back in, right? Then the pet just teleports in, corrupts, easy. Love to see it. Excellent work.
But maybe it's the counter we didn't realize, guys. Maybe it's a counter. Maybe we've been playing it wrong the whole time. You just send pets in to set the traps off, the Dragon Hunter traps. We're doing it wrong, guys.
Maybe mech needs to become meta in World versus World.
Oh no.
Maybe it does.
Just robots versus robots,
I don't see how that would ever be balanced.
That's the same then, isn't it? Bots versus bots is the same. Oh,
bots.
sorry. Never mind.
Yeah. I think maybe that needs to happen. I think we need 50 mechs versus 50 mechs.
I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it, right? The Rune of the Golemancer episode.
Yeah, that was actually very funny, actually.
The Chinese GVG meta. We've seen it.
Golems. That's basically golems versus. You just build golems, and then you have mechs and golems. Just futuristic Guild Wars 2 version.
That was a thing for a few days, and then it was instantly nerfed.
I think we need to have a meta where in every single meta, mech is best in slot. I want to see a monthly automated tournament, 5v5 only mechs.
I want to get 50 rangers in a squad and use barrage on the enemy. That's what I dream about every night, to be honest.
You know what we need? We need
50 pets charging the enemy.
We need an ability that does more damage the more people you hit with it.
Okay,
Like some
that sounds like a
Earthshaker, some
reverse meteor shower
some like Dota
situation.
2 Earthshaker memes. Okay, we need we.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. It's good. First guy gets hit, he's like, phew.
Yeah.
Last guy, see ya.
It just like chains around and
like
bounces off people and just
Mhm.
one shots people at some point.
Yeah.
I like that. That's good.
Bomb has been
Yeah.
neutralized by him
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah. Oh,
Spawn.
this was when they killed this build. I cried. I admit it. You know, it was brutal.
What's that?
Shattered Aegis Guardian. That was an actual
the
good
wheel
build.
bender.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
That's a shame.
Well, even like the build before that, like in HFT,
before, yeah.
when you could do Permeating Wrath and Shattered Aegis. Build was insane. It was so much fun to play, actually.
Yeah.
You know, and that was with retail too. So you'd kill yourself to retail.
Oh, they should
but
bring
it was
retail
worth it.
back.
Right?
They should bring it back.
Dude,
Poor healers can't tag anything.
I love retail because I would just see people play Ellie and just die. Right? They just die to retail. Very funny. I like
Poor
that.
Ellies.
Yeah, it's unfortunate stuff.
Yeah.
Ah, the good old days. The good old days when you would play meme builds.
Oh, there was. Oh, I do that every day.
Oh, you still
Meme
play
builds
meme
every
builds?
day. Yeah, it's the most fun. Yeah, until I meet somebody, I have to switch to my Selly gear and you know.
Then you gotta
just remind them.
roam on them. Remind them they aren't good and that only the Selly gear is good.
Yeah. Mower the mech. Bye. See ya.
That's true. Yeah, the clone death measure. That's true. Wow, that's super old school, actually, kid. Holy shit.
That is very old school.
That's super old school. There used to be a trait where when you're the clones would die and they would do damage, right? I think that was actually super weird. That was
really.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah, the Mesmer train shadow build.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a.
What about one-shot builds?
Yeah, I mean one-shot builds. I mean, those are definitely around.
This still thing, yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely one-shot people.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, it's not a one shot, but it just happens so quickly. You take a lot of damage, you die. It's a multiple skills, right? But
yeah,
just dodge, right? Surely, guys.
Just dodge from stealth.
Yeah, just anticipate. Just randomly dodge every 2 seconds, guys.
Yeah.
What's the problem with that? Just get endurance.
That is the way to go. That's the true big brain play right there. You love to see it. But yeah, I think that is actually a pretty good place to kind of wrap things up. Do you think that we've covered everything we're talking about? World, so we've said all the things we want to say actually about world versus world today. I think that's about it. Any kind of final thoughts or additional topics that we want to talk about before we vanish into the ether forever?
What about matchups? What do you think? Do you think that a team should be farmed the entire 7 days and just be like, yeah, okay, we just not play the game this week? What do you think? Do you think matchups could be addressed? Do you think it's a good idea for them to maybe make them shorter or last?
I mean, alliances are the solution to that in theory, right?
Do you think so?
In theory, yes, because you'll have if
everyone joins an alliance, I guess.
Yeah, you have a more relevant way to actually match people up by skill, right, or by effectiveness, essentially.
I hope they do. I hope it does work.
Whereas now it's not. I mean, look, a lot of the really strong guilds will actively lose, right, on purpose to manipulate the matchup, right, because they don't care about winning. So if there's actually like a more relevant way to, a way that one can't be manipulated as easily, because if it's based on a rating system, it's not going to be transparent. You're not going to be able to manipulate your rating to match up with someone else necessarily. It's going to be way harder to do that. So it will prevent that type of behavior. And also, it's just a better metric for determining, these two alliances are going to do well. You know, they won't completely farm each other. Like, it will be somewhat balanced in terms of population count. They're even looking at doing stuff like balancing it based off how many people are fighting, how many people are capturing objectives, and so on. So it can even be balanced in that regard to an extent. So I think that alliances, in theory, solve that. I think obviously there's going to be scuffed matchups. You know, I mean, it even happens in PvP, right? In PvP, sometimes you 500-0 the enemy, sometimes you get 500 owed. So
yeah, that's pretty much how it is in World vs. World. Actually, it's usually you lose the fight or they win the fight very quickly. It's hard to get balanced fights at the moment in World vs. World. I think that's hopefully, fingers crossed, will be addressed.
Yeah, it's it will be very interesting to see how it plays out. I think that just because of the nature of world versus world, there's always going to be imbalances. There's always going to be some matchups that are a bit like, oh, well, this isn't very exciting, is it?
If they increase the rewards for killing, I think that would promote people to want to win and want to fight and want to like get loot. Basically, I think that would be really good.
Yeah,
for the game, for sure.
I think that one thing they could do to make sure that it's not too much about just having people at night capturing everything is a system. I think there are some games that have this. I think that stuff like games like Lineage have this, where there's kind of like an active time. So in other words, if you're on an EU alliance, then stuff that's captured and scored during prime time would essentially
you get more points
give you more points, right? So in other words,
I like that.
it would punish you less for having less coverage and just getting night capped and completely like tier 3'd overnight. There's not much you can do about that, right? If you're asleep. So that's one way they could go about doing that. I think to essentially address that. I wouldn't make it like totally useless to capture stuff at night, because there are going to be some players who just play at unusual hours, right? Like during the middle of the day or...
Yeah, I guess NA, it'd be hard to get that to work, right?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, it would definitely be tricky on NA. You'd almost have to divide it into East and West Coast almost, right? Like, and that starts to get weird at that point because it's the same data center, so they couldn't do that. But yeah, I mean, there's probably some version of a system like that could be done to make it more about your actual performance when you're fighting other players rather than just capturing the objectives when everyone's asleep. There's probably something you could do.
What if they increase the points you get from killing? Actually,
possible,
because you get 2 right now, which is still quite a lot.
It's decent, yeah. It can definitely affect skirmishes, but only in prime time.
But if the enemy is not wanting to fight, it doesn't do anything. So,
yeah, that's true.
And if they know you get lots of points from it, people are more inclined not to do it. If winning really matters to them, they'll protect their point.
That will make the dynamic weird, right? Because now it doesn't really matter if you lose. But if it becomes extremely relevant, people are just they're not gonna want to fight, and they're correct in not doing that. It's like a huge misplay,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
It would be like a massive mistake to go into a fight that you are not somewhat confident that you can at least try to win, right? If you go into a fight that you're doomed, then you're actually just trolling, right? You're throwing at that point, which would be an interesting thing there for sure. But yeah. I think it's such a complicated thing, player behavior in this regard, that it's very much a wait and see. I think we just have to see what ArenaNet comes up with and just see what happens.
You can't address it anyway until alliances are out, and
maybe
see how alliances will work out anyway.
Yeah, maybe rewards are tied to alliances as well. That promotes people to join alliances.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Yes.
I would like to see some incentive for joining.
We can't have it. We can't have it where you have like 3 alliances and then everyone else, all the pugs, are just running around. Like, you got to try and get them in somehow. Promote
and then
it somehow.
Have leaderboards for alliances and
leaderboards. Oh,
yeah,
leaderboards.
Show off your
how good
titles.
You are.
How much of a life you don't have.
Yes.
Yeah.
World vs. World seasons are coming back. It's time to break out the sleeping for 2 hours a day and just grinding World vs. World.
Oh yes, I have good memories of not having.
It's time
sleep.
To go. It's time to go. Time to blast.
I ran a tournament for most kills in World vs. World for a week, and a lot of people they liked it, they enjoyed it, but it's a problem for the ranged support, because they can't tag as much, right? It's playing support.
I think they're looking into
a nice thing, right? But they definitely need to increase rewards for support. But yeah, like some people didn't like it because it's forcing people to play a lot, and I guess that's why you don't have it, right? We don't have these leagues and seasons. It's kind of not healthy, maybe. Because the way World vs. World is persistent.
Making it easy for supports to tag bags. Like, I don't really see a problem with it, right? Like, why just not make it very lenient?
Well, I mean, I think they're going to. It probably requires some systemic change, but yeah, they'll probably just make it so that if you apply a bunch of boons and healing, and then a player who you healed or booned gets a kill, you also get credit for the kill. It's probably what they're going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, boom, job done, easy peasy.
And then everyone will play support. Will be more inclined to play support.
Yes. Right now, there's the classic firebrand shortage, right? Firebrand,
and then you can actually attack.
Yeah.
So
this is good. That's why we're deleting Scrapper, so that there's no more Scrapper shortage, because you don't need them anymore. Just delete Scrapper from the game. That's big. All of a sudden, group forming is just way easier. But anyway, In that case, I think it is about
Awesome.
time to wrap things up. What an excellent show. Really appreciate that. Some big effort there from Garfried with his wonderful PowerPoint presentation skills. Once again, did it for Beatles. Now hits it hard with World vs. World 2. We love to see that. Educational streamer as always. So gamers, it's time for some shout out content here as well. Exclamation mark hosts in the chat, and look at that. It links you.
Ooh.
Look, it's you. Look, you're in the chat right now. That's crazy.
Ooh, let's go.
Yeah.
Even my website, beetlerank.com.
There you go. See? Yeah. See, I got the big think right there. But anyway, so, gentlemen, please go ahead and shout outs. Okay. Anything you want to say, tell us about yourself, tell us about what you do. Go ahead. Parrish, give us the juice.
Okay. Well, if you guys don't know me, then what have you been doing, guys? I'm streaming on Twitch. Come and check out my stream. I'm a professional memer. I mean, a streamer, and I enjoy obviously playing World vs. World, and I play lots of meme builds. So if you like that sort of thing, come and check it out. If you like music, come and check it out. I play a lot of different music on my stream. I love World vs. World, but I'm a bit of a doomer sometimes. So just have to bear with me a little bit when you come to my stream. If I'm a little bit, if I'm in tears in team depression mode, but yeah, come and check out the stream if you enjoy it, and then GG. Thank you for having me on TeaTime today.
What an advert. What an incredible advert. If that hasn't got you excited, I don't know what will. And of course, our other guest, the presentation lord, is Garfried.
I was supposed to say GvG champion of 2021.
That's true.
I forgot to mention, guys.
Foolish
Sorry about
15
that.
leader.
2021
as well.
GvG champion.
Incredible.
And yeah.
But go ahead, Garfried. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, I don't really stream much. Whenever I stream, I do some Beatles stuff usually. But not that often. But I'm outside of doing World for World things frequently. I command there sometimes, I lead there sometimes. But outside of doing that, I'm a Beetle racing enjoyer. So I lead a Beetle racing community. I host tournaments, and we're organizing some interesting stuff for that soon. So stay tuned for that. And you can find my website or our website at beetlerank.com if you are interested in Beetle racing. Go check it out.
There you go. So the links there are in the chat. They'll be beneath the YouTube as well and below the stream. So definitely click them. Get in there. You got to go check these gamers out. It's epic stuff. It really is. Thank you so much for hopping on board. Really interesting show, I think. Some fantastic historical context. And I think some good discussion about some of these changes, particularly that key World versus World change to Scrapper and what could maybe be done about that and some of that stuff. So thank you so much for joining me here today, especially Garfried there on very short notice. I really appreciate that, my friend. Thank you so much. And definitely stay tuned for all that Beetle racing stuff too. Of course, you're here right now. Follow this stream. TeaTime every week, more or less. I've been super consistent, like consistent streamer, guys. Professional streamer. I know what I'm doing. So follow the stream. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow all my social media. You guys know the drill. I'm not done for the stream today. In fact, there might even be a secondary dark TeaTime with Nike later on as well, talking about some stuff about game design. So stay tuned for that. But I'm going to be taking a brief break right now before moving on with the show. So thank you so much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you next time. We are out. Wait, no Doomgers. Okay.
See you guys.
Hey, take it easy, gamers. See you later.